By the time I saw the big screen of the Foothill Drive-In rising over the rooftops like a pale moon, my legs felt like they were made of wet sand. The morning had started with one bad decision stacked on another. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. No sirens, no shouting, no slammed doors. Just the quiet kind that happens when you're tired and hungry and running on that thin, stubborn thread that keeps you putting one foot in front of the other. Azusa had a way of looking bright even when you didn't feel it. The sun was already up, glittering off windshields and the chrome on passing cars. People in clean shirts carried iced coffees like they were light bulbs, like they had a personal sunrise in their hands. I tried not to stare. I hadn't eaten since, well, I honestly couldn't remember. Not a real meal. Not a sit-down, fork and plate kind of meal. I'd had a handful of something the day before, crackers maybe, and some warm water from a fountain that tasted like pennies. My stomach didn't even growl anymore. It had moved past complaints into this dull, hollow quiet that made my head feel floaty and my thoughts slow. When I got to the entrance of the swap meet, the noise hit me first. A layered hum of voices, laughter, bargaining, and the occasional shout that turned into a joke halfway through. There was music, too, tinny and distorted from a portable radio, and something old and upbeat that sounded like it belonged to a different decade. I followed the sound in the crowd, drifting in through the gate like I was being pulled by tide. Inside, it was its own world. Rows of pop-up canopies stretched across the lot, patchwork shades of blue and white and sun-faded red. The asphalt baked under my shoes. The air smelled like sunscreen, fried dough, dust, and motor oil, with random bright notes, citrus, perfume, grilled onions, that popped up as I passed. Every table was a story. There were bins of tangled cords and old remotes, racks of t-shirts with half-faded band names, a guy selling knives that looked too shiny to be trusted, a woman with a table full of vintage costume jewelry, rings sparkling like candy in the sun. Kids darted between adults, sticky with something sweet, dragging balloon animals like they were rare pets. I walked slowly, pretending to browse, because that's what you did when you didn't have a purpose. You wandered. You looked interested in things you couldn't buy. You made yourself small. Not invisible, because invisible got you overlooked, but not noticeable either. My mouth was dry, my lips felt tight. I tried to swallow, and it was like swallowing sand. I paused at a table piled high with VHS cassette tapes. Whole seasons of shows, bright covers, plastic cases. The seller, a man with a baseball cap and a sunburned nose, called out a price to someone and laughed. I watched his hands as he counted bills, fast and easy. Money moved through his fingers like he was used to it. The world felt like it ran on rules I'd forgotten. I kept walking. Somewhere deeper in, the smell changed. It became green. Not in a poetic way, in a real way. Fresh-cut stems, dirt, sweetness. The kind of smell you get when you open a refrigerator that's actually stocked with food instead of just condiments and regret. I followed it like a bloodhound, turning down an aisle lined with home goods. Plastic storage bins, chipped mugs, mismatched forks, until I saw it. A produce stand. Not a fancy one. No neon signs, no trendy lettering. Just a long folding table under a clean white canopy and crates stacked behind it like building blocks. Oranges rolled in one crate, tomatoes in another. Bunches of cilantro tied with rubber bands, bags of onions, and a row of avocados arranged neatly like they'd been counted twice. A chalkboard leaned against the front table leg, prices written in careful, tidy handwriting. Oranges, 5 for $2. Tomatoes, $1 a pound. Cilantro, 3 for $1. Corn, 4 for $3. Bag of mixed veg, $2. It was the last one that got me. Mixed vegetables. Like the universe had prepackaged survival. Behind the table stood an elderly couple. The man was thin and tall, wearing a straw hat and a pale blue button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled down. His hands were darkened by sun and work, veins raised like rivers. He moved slowly, but not weakly, more like someone who knew exactly where every muscle was and didn't waste motion. The woman was shorter, her dark hair pinned back under a visor, and she wore a floral apron that looked like it had seen 1,000 mornings. She was the kind of elderly that didn't read as fragile, she read as capable. Her eyes were sharp, the color of iced tea. She looked up as I approached. Not a quick glance, not the flick you away look I'd learned to recognize. She really looked like she was reading a label. I tried to smile and probably failed. I stopped at the edge of the table and stared at the oranges like they might whisper instructions. "Good morning," the woman said, warm but not overly sweet, just a greeting. "Morning," I echoed, my voice sounding rough like I'd swallowed gravel. The man nodded at me, quiet. I reached in my pockets out of habit, fingers brushing lint and nothing else. I didn't pull my hands out. I didn't want her to see how empty they were. My stomach chose that exact moment to break its silence. A loud, unmistakable sound. I froze, heat crawling up my face. I stared harder at the oranges, like I could disappear into their bright peel. The woman didn't react the way I expected. No smirk. No pitying, "Oh, honey." No sharp, "If you can't pay, move along." She leaned forward slightly, resting her hands on the table. "You hungry?" she asked. The question hit me so cleanly it almost knocked me over, because the answer was yes, obviously, but saying it out loud felt like stepping off a ledge. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She waited, not in a pressuring way, in a way that told me she had time. I nodded once, small. Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed practical. "You looking for work?" The word work made my spine straighten on instinct. Work was safe. Work was rules. Work was something you could do without needing to explain your whole life. "I can," I said quickly. "I can work." The man lifted his chin slightly, studying me. His gaze flickered to my shoes, my posture, the way I kept my arms close to my body. The woman glanced at him, and they had a whole conversation without words. Then she looked back at me. "We can't just hand out free food," she said, matter of fact. "But if you want to do a few small tasks, we can pay you a little and send you off with something to eat." My throat tightened. I nodded again. "Yes, I'll do whatever you need." "Not whatever," she said gently but firmly. "We'll keep it simple. We'll keep it proper." That sentence landed like a blanket. Proper, boundaries, clear lines. I didn't realize how much my body had been braced for danger until those words loosened something in my chest. She stepped out from behind the table, motioning to the crates stacked behind. "First thing, we need those crates sorted. Smaller ones on top, heavier ones on the bottom. You think you can do that?" "Yes," I said, and it came out too eager. The man spoke for the first time, his voice low and even. "No rushing. You hurt your back, you won't be much good to anyone." "I won't," I promised. "I'll be careful." The woman pointed to a corner where the crates were piled slightly messy, like someone had been in a hurry. Start there. When you're done, come back and I'll give you the next job. I moved behind the stand into their little shaded workspace and placed my hands on the first crate. The wood was warm, rough in places, solid. It felt strangely good to touch something real. I lifted and stacked, one by one, smaller on top, heavier on bottom. I tested the weight before I committed, adjusting my grip so I wouldn't fumble. My arms trembled a little, not from the weight, but from the weakness that came with hunger. The couple worked as I worked. They didn't hover, they didn't watch me like a hawk. They just did their routine, straightening produce, calling out prices, bagging oranges for customers. Every so often, the woman glanced back to see if I needed help, if I looked like I might drop something. She never said anything unless I asked. When I finished the crates, I stepped back to check. Neat stacks, stable, like a wall built carefully. I walked around to the front, wiping my hands on my jeans. The woman nodded approvingly. Good. Next. She handed me a damp towel and gestured to a tub of vegetables. Green beans, a little dusty, and cucumbers that looked like they'd been harvested early that morning. Wipe these down, just enough to make them look presentable. We don't want them dripping. I took the towel. Okay. As I wiped, the coolness of the vegetables seeped into my palms. The towel smelled faintly of vinegar and lemon. Clean, simple, like kitchens in homes I'd been in once, when I still belonged somewhere. A customer approached, a young dad with a toddler on his hip. The toddler pointed at the oranges and squealed. 5 for 2, the woman said brightly, as if her voice could make the fruit taste even sweeter. The man bagged them with quick, practiced motions. The dad handed over the cash. The exchange was so ordinary it almost hurt. I kept wiping. A couple aisles over, someone laughed loudly. Somewhere closer, a radio switched stations and a different song crackled through. I could hear a vendor yelling about best deal of the day, like it was a miracle. And there I was, doing small, normal work, tucked into the shade of a produce stand like I belonged. After the vegetables were clean, the woman tapped the chalkboard with the side of her hand. Can you write? Yes, I said. Yeah. Good. She handed me a stub of chalk. Prices changed. Tomatoes are 90 cents a pound today, and corn is 3 for 2. I stared at the chalkboard, at the neat handwriting already there. It was almost too tidy to touch. The woman noticed my hesitation. Just write it the best you can, doesn't have to be perfect. I swallowed and knelt beside the board. My fingers tightened around the chalk. I erased carefully with the side of my palm, smudging white dust across my skin, then wrote the new prices slowly, shaping each number with concentration. The chalk squeaked a little. I tried to keep my letters straight. When I finished, I stood and stepped back. It wasn't as neat as hers, but it was readable. It looked like effort. The man nodded once. That'll do. The woman studied the board and smiled. That'll do just fine. Then she reached under the table and pulled out a paper bag. My stomach clenched so hard it almost folded me in half. Before we do the last job, she said, you're going to eat something. I blinked. I can finish first. She shook her head. Nope, you don't work well when you're faint. That's how people get hurt. Sit down. There was a folding chair behind the table. Not a fancy one, but sturdy. She pointed to it like it was the most normal thing in the world. I hesitated for half a second, old instincts, old fear. And then I sat. She handed me the paper bag and a bottle of water. Inside the bag were 2 oranges and a thick sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Not fancy, no fancy bread, no decorative toothpick. But it was food, real food. The smell hit me and my eyes stung so suddenly I had to look down. "Eat," she said again, and her voice softened just a little. "No need to rush. Take your time." The man turned slightly away, pretending to organize something so I could have privacy. Like he knew the moment was tender and didn't want to embarrass me. I unwrapped the sandwich with shaking hands. The first bite was almost painful. My jaw ached like it hadn't chewed in days. I forced myself to go slow, like she said, but my body wanted to inhale it. The bread was soft. The filling, ham and cheese, with just a little mustard, was simple and perfect. The water tasted cold and clean. Halfway through, my hands stopped shaking. The world sharpened again. Not in the crisis way, in the normal way. Like my brain had been dimmed and someone turned the lights back on. When I finished, I peeled an orange. The scent burst into the air, bright and sweet, and I ate it section by section, juice dripping down my fingers. The woman watched me without staring, just aware. When I was done, she nodded toward a trash bag under the table. "You can toss your paper in there." I did, wiping my hands on the damp towel. The man finally spoke again. "Name?" The question caught me off guard. I'd gotten used to being "Hey" or "You." I swallowed. I almost said my full name, the one attached to old report cards and signatures, and a version of me that felt far away. Then I gave the one I used now. "Jen." He nodded. "I'm Intimio. That's my wife, Maria." The woman gave a small smile. "Nice to meet you, Jen." "Nice to meet you," I said, and I meant it. Maria glanced up at the sun, then back at me. "We've got about an hour before the rush slows. You up for one more task?" "Yes," I said, and this time it wasn't desperate. It was steady. "What do you need?" She handed me a stack of empty boxes. "Break these down and stack them flat. Keep them neat. We'll haul them later." I moved behind the stand again, doing as she asked. Fold, flatten, stack. It was repetitive work, the kind that let your mind breathe. As I worked, I listened. Maria chatted with customers like she'd known them for years. Some of them clearly came every weekend. They called her Miss Maria and teased Intimio about his hat. Intimio pretended not to enjoy it, but his eyes crinkled in a smile every time. A teenage boy tried to haggle too aggressively, and Maria shut it down with a laugh and a firm voice. "Honey, these prices are already kind. You want cheaper? Go grow your own." The boy grinned and paid. A woman with tired eyes bought a bag of mixed vegetables and whispered, "Thank you," like it was more than a purchase. Maria squeezed her hand. "You take care of yourself." There was something about the way she said it, like it wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. By the time I finished the boxes, my arms were sore in a satisfying way. Work sore, not suffering sore. I came around to the front again. Maria reached into a little metal tin under the table, an old cookie tin, and pulled out a few bills. She counted them carefully, then handed them out to me. "Here," she said, "for your time." It wasn't a lot, but it wasn't nothing. It was tangible proof that I'd earned something in a world that had felt like it was closing its doors. I took the money with both hands, like it was fragile. "Thank you," I said, and my voice caught. Maria nodded once, as if she understood without needing details. Then she lifted another paper bag and handed it to me. "Take this too," she said, brisk. "We've got some produce that needs to go today anyway. Couple tomatoes, oranges, some apples, and another sandwich." I didn't." "You worked," she interrupted, still kind but firm. This is part of your pay." Intimio leaned forward slightly. "And listen," he said, voice low. "We're here most Saturdays, morning until early afternoon. If you want honest work, you come by early. You ask for Maria. You ask for Intimio. That's it. No promises, no savior speech, no 'we'll fix your life.'" Just a door cracked open, clearly marked, with rules written on it. I nodded, trying to hold myself together. "I will." Maria pointed one finger at me, not scolding, just serious. "One more thing. You keep your boundaries too, you hear? Don't let people talk you into things you don't want. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to walk away." My throat tightened again, but this time the sting behind my eyes felt different. Not like shame, more like recognition. "I hear you," I said quietly. Intimio tipped his hat a fraction. "Good." I stepped back from the table, gripping the paper bag. The weight of it was small, but it felt like an anchor. As I walked away, the swap meet swallowed me again. Music, voices, the bright chaos of people buying and selling and living. But something had shifted. The world didn't feel quite as hostile. I found a spot near the edge of the lot, where the shadow of a canopy stretched long and cool. I sat on the curb, bag in my lap, and watched families drift by, vendors calling out deals, kids spinning in circles like they had endless energy. I pulled out the second sandwich and stared at it for a moment. It wasn't just food. It was proof that kindness could show up without strings, that some people could see you, really see you, and still treat you like a person, not a problem. I ate slowly, tasting each bite. Somewhere behind me, the enormous drive-in screen stood quiet in the daylight, waiting for nightfall and stories projected in light. I wondered what it would be like to sit in a car with someone who loved you, sharing popcorn, laughing at a movie, safe and full. That version of life felt far away, but it didn't feel impossible. When I finally stood to leave, I looked back one more time. Maria was laughing at something a customer said, her hands moving as she talked. Intimio was stacking oranges, methodical and calm. Their little stand was a bright patch of order in a messy world. I pressed the paper bag closer to my chest and started walking. Hungry and tired had brought me in, but I left with food in my stomach, money in my pocket, and something else I hadn't expected. A name to ask for, a place to return to, and the quiet, steady feeling that maybe, just maybe, I could build my way back, one small job at a time. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. If you want more true-to-life stories like this, told with heart, tension, and a little hope, hit the like button so YouTube knows you're here, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this story reminded you of someone, or you've got your own small kindness changed everything moment, drop it in the comments. I read them. If you or someone you know is going through a hard time, especially if you feel unsafe, overwhelmed, or like you might hurt yourself, please don't carry it alone. In the U.S., you can call or text 988 to the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you're in immediate danger, please call 911. If you're outside the United States, you can find local crisis numbers through IASP or find a helpline. You deserve support, and there are people who will listen right now.